If you went back to 2005 and told somebody, in 20 years, you're not going to own any movies. It's going to all be streaming, You just click on it and you watch it through the internet. They will look at you like you were actually stupid. Probably look back at their shelf full of DVDs or that little magic binder that we all used to have and think, yeah, this guy has actually lost his mind. But then you try and convince them, bear with me now, bear with me. You're going to pay a company every single month and they're going to let you watch whatever movies they currently have available over the internet. They would probably respond, so where are the DVDs? There aren't any. Then how do I watch the movie? Through the internet. Okay, but what happens if I stop paying? You lose access to everything. Okay, but what happens if they remove the movie from a service? You lose access. What happens if my internet goes out? You also lose access. Again, at the time, the person would have thought this was the stupidest idea they've probably ever heard. But in 2026, this is literally how everybody watches movies. Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Max, and Prime Video. We didn't just change where we bought movies, we completely changed our relationship with owning them. And we went even further than that, because I want you to think about something else. When was the last time you saw somebody buy a DVD player? Beyond that, when was the last time you seen somebody own a DVD player? Now, in the early 2000s, it would be probably criminal not to own a DVD player. How do you watch any sort of entertainment? But today, that's just not a problem anymore. They're actually obsolete. But there was a point where basically everybody had one underneath their TV. You had your TV, a cable box, and a DVD player. But today, nobody even owns the machine anymore. Streaming literally replaced the DVD, at least as far as movies. The reason I asked you to think about this is that I think gaming might eventually experience the exact same thing. Because right now, if I told the average gamer, one day, you might not need a PlayStation, Xbox, or gaming PC to play AAA games, they are also probably going to tell me that I'm stupid. And maybe I am. But we have heard this story before, because cloud gaming is slowly creating a world where your games don't actually need to run off the device sitting in front of you. And to insert my own personal experience with this, I was also part of the crowd that believed that cloud gaming will never take over having hardware. I'm a person who has had hardware with gaming my entire life. But I had a recent experience that changed that, or at least a few experiences. So I own a Steam Deck, and sometimes I want to play more demanding games. And obviously I take my Steam Deck to work and everywhere else that I realistically can. But with that, sometimes I'm doing a playthrough of a game that's demanding and the Steam Deck might run it, but it might not run it at the exact specs that I want it to. So I started leaning on GeForce Now. And the biggest problem that I ran into with GeForce Now is that it's actually really, really good. Now, when cloud gaming first came out, it was kind of laggy, a lot of input latency. But as I was playing on my Steam Deck, I was like, this is really playable. Like, I played it for hours at a time with pretty much no complaints. There would be the occasional stutter, but nothing really worth worrying about. But that wasn't really the experience that made me think, oh, cloud gaming is the future. It was because one day I was trying to play Cyberpunk and I actually didn't have it installed on my PC. So I streamed the game at home, which is something I never thought I would do. But just like when I played on my Steam Deck, I played a session of Cyberpunk for 8 hours with literally almost no complaints. Then that's when I started thinking like, there really could be a world where hardware isn't needed. And obviously nowadays prices have gone up and up and up, and unless the AI bubble bursts, it will continue to be that way, further pushing casual gamers out. And it made me think realistically, one day this could be the main way we're playing games. And I don't think it's as far away as many people think. Okay, before we start predicting the death of the PlayStation 6, we need to explain what cloud gaming actually is, because the concept sounds way more complicated. Normally, when you're playing Cyberpunk on your PC is doing the work. Your GPU is rendering Night City, your CPU is processing everything, and the game is installed on your SSD. Your hardware is running the game natively. Cloud gaming basically says, what if we moved all of that somewhere else? Instead of your computer running Cyberpunk, a powerful computer sitting in a data center somewhere runs Cyberpunk. Then it streams the video of the game to you. When you press X, that input gets sent through the internet to that computer. The game reacts, then the resulting image gets sent back to you. It's basically Netflix, except you control the movie. And that's why internet connection and latency matters so much. Okay, so I'm including some gameplay that I got from cloud gaming. And before you think that I'm just a YouTuber, I got the best internet ever, I literally got an internet warning before I booted the game up. So this is me testing cloud gaming under average conditions. With Netflix, if the video you're watching arrives 100 milliseconds later than expected, you don't really care. You're literally watching Shrek. Shrek isn't waiting for you to press X. The biggest thing is gaming is completely different. If I press jump, I expect my character to jump immediately. So that's really the biggest issue with cloud gaming. How do you make a game run potentially hundreds of miles away feel like it's running under the machine directly in front of you? And for years, the answer was basically, you don't. If you've been gaming for a while, you probably remember when cloud gaming was completely garbage. On Live tried this stuff years ago. PlayStation had PlayStation Now. Google spent a ton of money launching Stadia, and Google Stadia was supposed to be the moment. Google basically came out and said, gaming hardware downloads consoles, man, forget that. And gamers said, okay. Then Stadia shut down in 2023. And that failure did serious damage to how people view cloud gaming, because now anytime somebody says cloud gaming is the future, somebody immediately thinks about Google Stadia. And honestly, that's a fair point. But there is a problem with that argument. A company failing to execute an idea doesn't necessarily mean the idea itself is bad. There were social networks before Facebook and smartphones before the iPhone, and streaming services before Netflix. Sometimes the first version of the future just sucks. Now this is where things are really getting interesting, because cloud gaming isn't just some theoretical technology anymore. According to a 2025 global gaming survey from Boston Consulting Group, 60% of gamers surveyed have already tried cloud gaming. 60%. That's actually higher than I would have guessed. And of the gamers who tried it, 80% said their experience was positive. That doesn't mean 60% of gamers exclusively play through the cloud though. Actually, not even close. In fact, around 70% of cloud gaming users surveyed still spend less than 1/4 of their total gaming time playing through the cloud. And I think that's a really important statistic, because cloud gaming hasn't replaced traditional gaming. It's just being added to it. And that's exactly how technological transitions usually start. People don't immediately abandon the old thing. They slowly start using the new thing whenever it's more convenient. We've kind of already started doing it with things like Xbox Game Pass. Let's say some random 100 gigabyte game gets added. You're looking at it like, that looks kind of cool, but you don't know if you actually want to play it. Traditionally, you had to download 100 gigabytes just to find out. Maybe you wait an hour, maybe longer. You launch it, play it for 15 minutes, this trash, delete. Then you immediately run to Steam and get a refund. Cloud gaming changes that. Click, play, no download, no installation, no storage space. And Microsoft has specifically talked about players using Xbox Cloud Gaming to try games before deciding whether to download them. That's the type of thing that makes cloud gaming dangerous to traditional gaming hardware. Not because it's immediately better, but because it's more convenient in certain situations. And convenience has a habit of spreading. Okay, so this brings us back to DVDs, because people didn't stop using DVDs because streaming was objectively superior in every possible way. Physical media actually has advantages. You own it. It doesn't disappear because Netflix lost a licensing agreement. Your internet could go out and the DVD still works. Nobody can randomly decide, sorry, Shrek 2 isn't available in your region anymore. It's your DVD. But despite all those advantages, physical movies collapse. Americans spent around $11.8 billion buying and renting DVDs and Blu-rays in 2012. By 2023, they had fallen to around $1.5 billion. That's a decline of almost 90%. And by 2026, surveys show 42% of Americans had abandoned physical media like this and tapes entirely. And I know some people aren't gonna like this take from me, but I'm part of this 42%. I've said multiple times, like, physical media isn't something that I'm just so extremely passionate about. As a person who has a PC, I haven't actually bought a game in a very long time, probably upwards of 5 years. And I'll say again, the only physical media that I actually care about are vinyls. I have a nearly $2,000 vinyl collection. So I understand the draw to physical media, but I would be lying if I said video game physical media was something I care about. I've talked about this also in previous videos. I have a very large physical media game collection. probably nearly 150 games, and that's after I sold half of my collection to GameStop back in the day. But if I was being completely honest, all those things do is just take up space now. So it's not really like adding any type of value to my life. But beyond that, for me and most of the general population, I want you to think about how fast the perception actually changed. Having hundreds of DVDs used to be completely normal. Now if I walk into your house and you have 700 DVDs lined up alphabetically on a shelf, I'm assuming you're really into movies. Like, you have to be a movie enthusiast. And that's what worries me about gaming hardware. Now again, something I want us to focus on in this video is that streaming did not just kill the DVD, it basically also killed the dedicated DVD player. And that's the distinction that I think is really important, because those transitions sometimes happen in two stages. First, the physical media becomes unnecessary. Then the machine design to play that media becomes unnecessary. Gaming has already gone pretty far through stage one. Think about your game collection right now. How many games that came out in the last 5 years do you actually own physically? Especially if you're on PC. I mean, if you're on PC, you don't own anything. Steam has literally already convinced PC gamers that having a shelf full of discs was unnecessary. Your collection became an account. Console gaming has been moving in the same direction. And of course, recently, PlayStation has announced that they are going to stop producing physical games entirely. The disc is literally already disappearing. But what's stage two? The box. Because if the game isn't physically sitting inside your house anymore, and eventually the computer running the game doesn't have to be sitting inside your house either, why does the average person need a console? That's the billion-dollar question. And look, this is not hypothetical. Xbox Cloud Gaming and NVIDIA GeForce already works across a ridiculous number of devices. This is for GeForce Now and Xbox Cloud Gaming. You can run it on a phone, tablet, computer, certain Samsung TVs, Fire TV devices, even a Meta Quest. You could literally connect the controller to certain televisions and just stream Xbox games without an Xbox console sitting underneath the TV. Now just think about how ridiculous that would sound 20 years ago. But that's what I'm talking about. That's the DVD player moment. Your TV didn't literally become a DVD player. It made needing a DVD player unnecessary because the content started coming from somewhere else. Cloud gaming is attempting to do the same thing. Your TV, your phone, your laptop, it all just becomes the console. Anything with a screen and a decent internet connection becomes a potential gaming machine. And suddenly, Microsoft doesn't need you to buy an Xbox. They just need you to use an Xbox. And that's a massive difference. Think about how much money they would save by not mass producing consoles. If they just offered a streaming service and it actually became popular, it literally deletes the console entirely. Now you might think that idea I just said is far-fetched, but people are actually doing this. Microsoft reported that from October through December 2024, Xbox players streamed around 140 million hours through Xbox Cloud Gaming. Then Microsoft said cloud gaming hours among Game Pass subscriptions increased around 45% year over year by late 2025. That doesn't sound like dying technology, because clearly there is a demand. And analysts expect that demand to grow dramatically. Another statistic by the Boston Consulting Group estimated cloud gaming generated around $1.4 billion in revenue in 2025. Their projection for 2030, $18.3 billion. That's more than 13 times larger in only 5 years. Now, obviously, market projections aren't prophecies. Analysts have been wrong before. Remember when everybody told us that we'd be going to work with VR headsets on and buying virtual houses in the metaverse? Exactly. So I'm not saying cloud gaming will become an $18 billion industry because somebody put it on a graph. I'm saying there's enough money and enough growth here that dismissing cloud gaming as another Google Stadia is getting harder. Now let's talk about what I think is cloud gaming's biggest weapon. Gaming is expensive. Let's say you want to play the newest AAA game. Maybe you spend hundreds of dollars on a console, or maybe you build a gaming PC. Now we're talking about thousands of dollars of investment. And then a few years later, your GPU is getting old. New games are more demanding, maybe you upgrade. Cloud gaming completely changes that relationship because your terrible laptop doesn't have to be powerful enough to run Cyberpunk. It just needs to be powerful enough to display Cyberpunk. The expensive GPU is somewhere else. And that could potentially remove one of the biggest barriers preventing people from playing high-end games. Now again, to insert a personal story, this is actually one of the main reasons that I did not upgrade my PC. I currently have a 2060 PC. It's relatively old, but it's not that old. But I realized through cloud gaming, essentially I could kind of rent a 5080. So I tried it and got all of those graphics that I wanted in my native PC. And I started thinking, realistically, if I wanted to upgrade my PC, I'm looking at $2,000-$3,000. Or I could pay this NVIDIA GeForce Now subscription for $20. If I add it up, $20 is around $240 a year. Spread across 15 years would be about $3,000. So it would literally take me 15 years of paying for this subscription to get the same level of performance that I would get running natively. I don't know if I said that right. It would take 15 years for the cost to be the same. So realistically, what is the point of upgrading? This is like something that actually has already taken effect on me. I've said it before, I think in the future, all I'll have is a gaming handheld, if anything else. Because I don't know if you know, the gaming handheld can also stream to a monitor. So if I have the device that streams to a monitor, why do I need this super powerful PC? And that completely changes the way we look at buying hardware. Because now the kid with a $150 Chromebook can play Cyberpunk at 100 FPS. So this is why I think the Netflix comparison becomes really important. Netflix isn't a device. Spotify isn't a device. You don't ask what Spotify machine do you own. Spotify is an account. You sign in, your music is there. Netflix, same story. Gaming has historically been different. That question has always been, what do you play on? PlayStation, Xbox, PC, or Nintendo. The hardware defines the ecosystem. Cloud gaming has the potential to break that relationship. Imagine Xbox becoming less of a console and more of an account. You're at home, TV. You're traveling, laptop. You're laying in the bed, phone. You're at somebody's house, sign in. That service follows you. And at that point, Xbox isn't necessarily the black box underneath your TV. Xbox is where you are. And if that happens, the console war becomes something completely different. And beyond that, I think that eliminates a console war. Because, okay, I pay $20 for this GeForce subscription. But if I want the Xbox subscription, that's also $20. People on average now already spend around $150 in subscriptions. I don't think it's that hard of a sell for a gamer if you're like, okay, I like PC games and I like PlayStation games. Let me get a subscription to both of them. $40. For $40 a month, that could be really worth it to some people. And if they follow the Xbox Game Pass formula and you don't actually have to buy every game, that makes it a lot more scary. Now, everything I've said so far probably makes cloud gaming sound amazing. And technologically it is, but there are some serious problems. Starting with the most obvious one, your internet. Now, I'm gonna be honest, like I said in the beginning of the video, I don't have the greatest internet. You feel me? I'm not running a Starlink. And it was playable. So realistically, this is really only something that applies for people with very, very low internet, which might be more people than I know, but that's not a statistic that I know. But what I do know is that I was able to stream very well on like commercially available internet. That's at my job. I was able to do it at Starbucks before. Like, you don't have to have the most insane internet in the world for this to run well. So I think that already kind of eliminates that problem. But there also is the thing about ownership. This is probably my biggest personal problem with the whole thing. I don't know if I want this in the future, because we slowly been giving up ownerships in exchange for convenience. And like I said before, we kind of already started doing this. When you used to buy a physical PS2 game, you had the disc. When you buy a digital game, your ownership becomes a little more complicated. And when you're playing a game through Game Pass, you're essentially just renting access. And with cloud gaming, you don't have this, and you definitely don't have files. You don't even have hardware running game. You have access. And access can disappear. The service can shut down, the game can get removed, licensing can expire, or the subscription can increase in price. And Google Stadia proved that these services absolutely can disappear. Google on Stadia in 2019. By 2023, gone. Now, Google at least refunded Stadia hardware and game purchases, but the service itself vanished. And that's something a physical game doesn't do. Now, my Xbox 360 doesn't wake up tomorrow and say, unfortunately, due to changing market conditions, GTA 5 will no longer be available beginning September 1st. I just put the disc in and it still plays, no matter what's going on with Rockstar. This also presents a problem with gaming preservation. There are games from 30 years ago that we can still experience because physical copies exist, ROM exists. Now imagine a game designed completely around cloud infrastructure. The company shuts the servers down. Gaming already has a preservation problem, and cloud gaming can make that dramatically worse if companies don't take preservation seriously. And honestly, history doesn't make me confident that corporations are going to preserve games purely because they love gaming history. I think the biggest real life example of this that I could come up with is Flappy Bird. Obviously, Flappy Bird was a pretty big game like 10-15 years ago, and it eventually got taken down. Now, phones with Flappy Bird installed on it, I don't know if it's still to this day, but I know at a certain point, we're literally selling for thousands of dollars. Now, I don't know if this will be a thing, but I'm saying that there could be a time where there's a game that everybody loves and nobody will be able to access it. And that could be kind of scary, because what if somebody's favorite game gets taken away? I know if there was absolutely no way for me to play Skyrim, I would be distraught, like actually heartbroken. So I couldn't even imagine a world where that problem exists. Speaking of Skyrim, then there's something especially important for PC gamers: mods. Half the reason Skyrim is relevant is because people have spent over a decade turning the game into pretty much whatever they want. That's kind of a part of PC gaming, and you're accessing the actual files. If cloud gaming becomes the main way of gaming, it potentially removes that freedom. If the game is running on somebody else's computer in a locked down data center, you're not going to have the control to alter files. And they're definitely not going to give you the access to be able to emulate it later. But I will say, I do have a hard time imagining cloud gaming completely replacing traditional PC gaming for enthusiasts. It's just too much freedom that people will lose. And even me personally, with mods, I don't think it's something I want to give up. Now, I could do mods on my Steam Deck, so, I'm good. But just for the vast majority of people, most people don't care about mods. So a lot of the time, this probably isn't going to be a problem for most people, if I'm being realistic. And this is why I low-key don't think it'll actually happen anytime soon. I don't think consoles are disappearing. I more think we're headed toward a hybrid future. I think gaming enthusiasts will still have their dedicated consoles, but I think the more casual gamers will switch completely to streaming. You might play locally when you care about latency and stream when convenience matters more. And for most people, I want to remind, because a lot of people don't realize this, especially who are watching my videos. If you're watching my videos, you're probably a hardcore gamer. Most of the people only game when it's convenient. They don't care about the specs. They don't care about frame rate. They just care if it runs. And if cloud gaming makes it run and they don't have to spend thousands of dollars on a console, they're probably not really going to care that much. So that's why I really think the average person might rely on streaming significantly more than enthusiasts do. Which again is basically what happened with movies. Blu-rays didn't disappear. They still actually exist, believe it or not. And people still collect physical movies. There are people who care deeply about bitrate and image quality and ownership, but that is not the average consumer. Streaming literally is the default. Physical media became the enthusiast option. So I mentioned that I'm mainly playing my Steam Deck earlier, but handheld PCs are becoming more and more popular, and they're fighting the same battle. You want more performance, you need more power means more heat requires more cooling, and all of that destroys battery life. Cloud gaming basically asks, what if the handheld doesn't actually run the game? So much so that there was actually a console released by Logitech that was purely for streaming. That could lead to cheaper, lighter, longer lasting gaming devices. Again, assuming your internet isn't garbage. That's why I am really taking cloud gaming serious, and I think that it's a viable option for the future. Is it better at running games natively in a lot of situations? Probably not. But if we look at the history of consumer technology, the superior hardware doesn't just automatically win. Convenience wins. Think about it. Spotify doesn't give you ownership of the music, and nobody cares. I would never go back to buying an individual CD for every artist that I wanted to listen to. But why do people choose that every time? Because it's convenient and it gives me access to more things. I'm sure there are hundreds of artists that I would have never listened to or never heard of if Spotify wasn't a thing. The biggest hurdle that they are going to face is making it good enough to where the average person can't tell the difference. And honestly, again, I really think we're there already. I really think the average consumer does not know the difference. The only thing that we're waiting on is for it to become more and more popular. So is cloud gaming the future? Yeah, I really do think it is. But again, I don't think it's the entire future. I don't think we're going somewhere with gaming hardware just becomes a distant memory as soon as next generation. And I definitely don't think competitive pro gamers are about to start trying to play tournaments through McDonald's Wi-Fi. What I think is going to happen is cloud gaming is going to slowly become more and more normal. You use it once because you don't want to download something, like me. Then you use it at vacation or at work, also like me. Or you realize your TV supports it. Oh, I could play something on my phone. The internet infrastructure improves, the latency improves, servers get closer, more games supported, more devices supported, and eventually you stop even thinking about the fact that you're using cloud gaming. And I think that's what we're gonna get. Because when we watch something on Netflix, we don't just think about the fact, oh my God, I'm streaming a movie right now. We just think we're watching a movie. And I think that could become the reality for gaming as well. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Comment your opinion on cloud gaming. Do you think it's the future? Do you think it's not? And I truly appreciate you for tuning in today. See y'all next time.